Things you own end up owning you.
You're not performing tonight, are you?
Oh yeah, I am. But show call's not until 6 p.m. and it is 3:22 now, so I got plenty of time.
Wow. And what time do you try to get there?
I try to get there around like 5:30. That way I can do a little bit of exercise, some preventative stuff, and then I start putting on my makeup around 6, grab a cup of coffee around 6:45. Then we check the schedule about 15 minutes prior to the show. We always check the schedule and see if our positions change from the day before or not.
Okay, that's so interesting. Okay, well, we're going to talk about that. It is Saturday. I just was in Vegas last weekend. I got back home on Monday. I was at your show in Las Vegas, Nevada, baby, called
That's right.
Mystère. And you're an acrobat or tumbler. Do you say acrobat or do you say tumbler?
Either one.
Either one? Acrobat is
Yeah,
more the
probably
general term,
acrobat.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'd probably say acrobat because I do a lot of different things on the side. So I like to do break dancing, head spins, flares, all that handstand and hand balancing.
I
So
love watching
acrobat's
you do
probably
that
better
crazy
time.
shit on your Instagram. It's one of my favorite things to do, really.
Thank you. Thank
And I
you.
just saw you, by the way, post that little vestibular trainer, which I was like, I've never seen
Yes.
one of those before. I'm gonna order one. I don't know how much it is. I haven't looked at, but I literally
It's
followed that account because of you. I'm not even kidding, dude, because I was like,
yeah.
this is
So
fantastic.
the first time I ever saw a vestibular trainer, it was like someone out in Russia or Mongolia or something because I saw it had Cyrillic lettering or whatever. And I was like, damn, that's so cool. I want to get one. And so I looked up the price. It's about $2,300, no matter where you buy one. So, so these are actually made for ice skaters. So they'll do,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And the one that I purchased is really nice because it's Bluetooth controlled. You can control how many rotations per second on your phone. And it has a
Mm.
bunch of different like auto start, auto stop features. You can control how fast it accelerates or how slow it accelerates. But I saw that and I was like, you know what? I know this is meant to be used for feet. I want to use it for my head. I want to do it upside down.
Yeah, and that's why,
So
and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. And honestly, though, dude, I don't know. I've seen there used to be this like little disc. You mentioned Russia. I
mhm,
remember as a kid we'd have these little discs, but they weren't,
with the
you
ball
know,
bearings inside of it, right?
yeah, they weren't
Yeah,
automated. You
yeah,
would just do this kind of thing for
yeah. Yeah,
funsies.
and then
Like
you
it
start
wasn't,
rotating. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but I've never seen one that's like a whole thing because it looks legit and it was like a big platform on it. And I thought,
Oh, it is, man. And they have put so much time. It's called Axle Trainer for anyone that's interested about what we're talking about.
mm-hmm,
It's basically a motorized plate that's
mm-hmm,
it's about 4 inches tall and about maybe like 15, 16 inches across. And I modified it a little bit so I could do headstands on it and spin. And it's basically to teach people how to do axle turns and loops and like all these
mm-hmm.
interesting ice skating maneuvers. So, but I just kind of used it for my own purposes, and they put in so much time and effort into it. There's actually a real time graph that appears on your phone that shows you how many rotations per second you're doing.
No, I mean,
So I
and
can go
look,
back and analyze the footage, and I know exactly how fast I was going.
yeah, and look, you're using it as a professional for a professional skill. But see, I do these things with my clients that are not circus performers, they're not
Yeah,
ice skaters,
yeah,
but they're getting old. And, some of my older clients, I mean, when I first meet them, they have a hard time doing a sit up, they get dizzy. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah.
So I do all sorts of things that I just come up with,
Mhm,
as
mhm,
simple as an RDL, say, just touching your one foot, while you're standing on one
mhm.
foot, touching. But that motion of going up and down, for some people, that's enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's hard to say exactly what it is because is it a use it or lose it type situation, or are some people just genetically more sensitive to that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because I was listening to a podcast, actually the one that you were Forrest Meridi.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Forrest Moretti, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Or
there was
Moretti,
one
I don't
part
know
of
how to
the
say it, but yeah, uh-huh.
yeah, there was this one part of the podcast where they were talking about the reason why some people get so sick when they're dizzy is because your body interprets that as some type of toxin is inside your body and we got to get rid of it. So
Mm-hmm.
and I've had the exact same experience when I'm coaching with kids. So typically you've probably done this before, but we'll go over to like the men's rings or whatever and we'll hold on to the rings and attached to the top is a ball bearing so it can spin freely, right?
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
that'll
what
fuck
people
you up. Yeah. And you do
so,
this?
so, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, yeah, so the kids hanging there the kids hanging there by their hands. They go into a straddle position, so they move their feet apart. You grab their legs and you spin them as fast as they can. And they're not spinning that fast, right? But the second they bring their feet together, they just go hyper speed, man.
Yeah,
They go
yeah,
ludicrous. They go ludicrous speed, right? And some of the kids will fall down and they're just like this. I'm like, that was amazing. And then there's other kids. I had this one little kid, Baptiste. I think that was his name, little French kid. The second I let go of his feet, he just falls down. He's like, I'm sick. I gotta throw up. And I was
Barf.
like, whoa. Yeah, I was like, some people are just so hypersensitive to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and I think like all things, I think like all things, whether it's genetic or not, it's probably trainable to some
Yes,
degree, And I just
absolutely,
think the
absolutely.
people that are on the far end of like that enjoy it, those are the ones that are gonna end up in NASA or flying,
Cirque du
the
Soleil and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. I do think though it's trainable, like I said, because even and at any age, I mean, I have clients in their 70s, like I said,
Yes.
met them, doing a sit up would make them dizzy. And now, we're
Yeah.
doing multiple sit ups, we're doing toe touches,
Yes.
starting to get
Yes.
into handstands, which again,
Okay.
for a
Good.
70-year-old, I mean, that again, that has never done it. That's a really
Mhm.
wild
That's a
thing to
huge.
do.
That's huge.
Do you know what I mean? So it's
And I
definitely
think that
trainable.
demographic, yeah, I think that demographic has the most to gain from that type of exercise.
Exactly. And that's why I thought, oh, wow, this is a great little tool. Cause I was like, dude, I'm going to buy this, but it's like $2,000. But, it's a worthwhile investment, honestly. And I was watching their Instagram and there was like kid playing violin on it and like all kinds of stuff. And I was like, okay, so you could do, for example, I teach a lot of people juggling. Like a lot of people don't know how to juggle. You're in a circus. You
I don't
probably
know how to juggle.
For real? You don't know how to juggle three balls?
No.
Really? Oh
Bro,
man.
no, no, no. Yeah, yeah. And I always lean forward, right? And I start like running with the ball.
Oh, but
So
you know how to start. See, you're just,
yeah, yeah,
you're a
yeah.
little
I know
you're
how to
athletic.
start. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I teach people juggling and I was thinking, oh, that'd be a great thing to do while you're spinning. Obviously not as fast as you're spinning. I was watching you upside down on your head. I mean, this motherfucker was spinning like I don't know. How long did you stay on it?
I usually stay anywhere from like a minute to a minute and a half on top of it.
Dude, a minute upside down at that speed. I don't
Well,
know.
and it doesn't stay at that speed consistently. So I have to figure out the programming on this thing because it's kind of vague. You can tell someone where English is not their first language wrote and programmed it. So I got to kind of figure out the settings, right? So, but it'll put in a certain amount of power, and then if you go beyond that speed, so like when you wrap in and you start going really fast, it'll let off, right? And then when your speed comes back
So it
down,
notices
it'll
that.
yeah, so it notices and it can track exactly how fast you're going. And once you reach a certain speed, it'll stop pushing you, you know.
Mm. Okay, I thought it was just continuous, like you just set it kind of and it just goes for you. But you're saying
No, 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 no. Yeah.
it'll notice that when you're wrapping in, it'll slow down, huh?
Yeah, yeah, it'll slow down at that point, and then once you get back down to about where that speed is, then it'll input the energy one more time, and you can just stay on it as long as you want, and it'll keep going in kind of like a wave, inputting the energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a cool little thing though. Honestly, I'm probably gonna look into it more and probably get one too, just because it's something.
Absolutely. Well, and it's like there's no idea what the it's like we have no idea what the ramifications are for a tool like this. It's like maybe you're like gonna get superpowers or something like that, but I've really enjoyed working on this thing, and it's like I'm to the point where nothing causes me to get dizzy anymore.
Really, dude, you got
Yeah.
to do one of those like NASA chambers though, you know what I mean? Like for real, like just to see how much you can. No, like I
Yeah.
wonder if
Yeah.
you would be able to withstand more than the average person because you're like you're saying you're not that dizzy. I do wonder.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've seen those, you know what I mean, right? When people are sitting there
Yeah.
and then they and they pass out.
It's like the G acceleration chambers or whatever they're called.
Yeah. Even though it's a
yeah.
different thing, but still it's
Yeah, yeah.
straining that vestibular system a lot. So
Okay.
it's like, I'd be curious. I don't even
That
know
would be
how you-
really fun. I've always wanted to pass out under high speed, so let's try it.
Yeah, well, that'd be something fun. So listen, man, we were talking to you about before. You told me that you got into tumbling at 17, which at tumbling or acrobatics, anything like that is really late, man, really late. I mean, it's incredible that, you got into it so late and you just kind of started doing it on your own, learning it, blah, blah, blah kind of thing, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't have much guidance at the beginning because when you're a 17 or 18-year-old kid, you're not even really thinking about the future, right? It's just like, oh, I can do a backflip. Isn't that cool? And the more I practiced it and the more I started working with gymnastics coaches and clients, I started realizing like, hey, I'm kind of good at this. Like maybe I could do this for like a work or for a career.
Mm-hmm.
And so I trained it for about 8, 9 years, and I was 29 years old. I'll back up a little bit. So I was coaching at Camp Woodward. It's an international camp, right? Gymnasts from all around the world are coming out there. So they took me out to Denmark. I lived there for 1 year. And then I lived in Iceland for 4 years after that. And Denmark and Iceland are the best equipped tumbling gyms in the entire world right now.
Really?
I mean,
Denmark,
because
I could expect, but Iceland? Really?
yeah. Because
Wow.
well, in Iceland and a lot of the Nordic countries, they are pretty good about taking government money and putting it into facilities that benefit everyone. And in the United States, like we'll do that for like senior citizen centers, for like pools and the YMCA and stuff like that. But over there, they do it for gymnastics and soccer and every sport you can imagine. And so their gymnastic halls are absolutely top tier. In fact, they have these landing mats that they almost feel like water beds. You can land straight on your head in a triple back and you are totally fine. And the way that they do that is they have this memory foam, right? And they drill holes, they extrude holes through the memory foam. So when you land on it, like air comes out the side and it squishes. And then what they do is they wrap it with a microfiber cloth. So it's like super stretchy. And then they'll actually put a trampoline underneath it. So so there's two impacts. There's the impact of first hitting the mat, and then there's the impact of the mat hitting the trampoline. And so it slows the impact down so much you can land straight on your head and just be totally fine.
They really thought that shit through, huh?
So and then some crazy dude's like, hey, what if I put this on a scissor lift that you can control with a key on the wall? And so so for example, sometimes when we're learning a triple back, we'll do a double back onto a really high mat, usually a mat that's above your head height, right? So that way you can practice the rotation and speed for a triple back without actually having to do a triple back.
So it's because you don't want to land too hard, right? That's why you're
saying?
Yeah,
because attempting a triple back is dangerous, right? So we'll do double backs up onto something. We call this a timer because you're getting the timing for the final skill. And so you can rotate just as fast and land on something that's super safe without having to actually do the skill. And so these guys thought, hey, let's put a scissor lift under that. So you'll be like at the gym training and you'll hear, doot, 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 and they're just raising these things up. I mean, who knows how many like millions of dollars it took to make these facilities.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you live in a country like Iceland where it's fucking cold all the time. Well, there's nothing
and that's the big reason, right? Is because in the winter, these people have nothing to do because the winters are so insanely harsh out there and it's extremely dark. So they make these beautiful indoor facilities where you can go play football or, whatever sport you can think of.
Dude, tell me more about living in Iceland. This sounds wild. Like,
there's
a few things I love about Iceland, the women.
Yes. Yeah.
Sigur Rós. I don't know if you're a fan of the band.
Sigur Rós. Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
And
Björk.
Björk, of course. And what's the strong man? What's his name?
Oh, dude, I sat in a sauna with him.
No shit.
Yes. Hafthor, I think is his name.
Yeah. He just goes by Thor, I was gonna say. But yeah.
So I will say this to anyone. You must one time in your life go visit Iceland, at least for a week. And I think the best time to do it is late October or early November because it's dark enough and that you can see the northern lights everywhere. Wow. So I think like early November is fantastic. Like you don't have too much snow. You can still drive around Iceland and it's not like blizzard conditions yet. But that is the best time to go. And it is a once in a lifetime experience. You're seeing waterfalls that are the biggest in all of Europe. You are seeing just untouched, just wild, pristine nature out there.
Yeah.
Now, living in Iceland is a very different story. So number one, it's an island, right? And so islands are always going to be incredibly expensive because they basically have to import everything. And it's okay for the government to import something, right? But if you try to import something, then they throw these massive tariffs on top of it and it makes it obscenely expensive. So number one, it's expensive to live there. Number two, and by the way, all of the Icelandic people I lived with are the most incredible people I have ever met in my life. They brought me into their homes. They cooked me home-cooked Icelandic meals. I coached their kids. They would bring me to different events and everything. They took such good care of me out there. So I love
I've
Icelandic
only met
people.
one. I mean, I met a few in LA, but not like friends. But I have had the same experience, even though it was brief. That such
Mm-hmm.
nice people, man.
Yeah,
Incredibly
and
nice
I think
people.
the Icelandic people would agree with me that the weather out there is a love-hate relationship. There's just certain days where you're like, I am so blessed to be living in this country, and then there's like an entire like 3 months period where you haven't even seen the sun like once, where you're like, I hate this place and I hate everyone around me.
Oh my God.
You know,
How do
so
they
in
deal
the
with
in
it?
the
Tell me. Sorry.
you know, I think if you grow up in that, then you don't really know a difference. But for someone like me, I lived in sunny South Carolina, man. So that's a huge change for me because, in the summer, you're getting like basically 23 to 24 hours of sunlight per day. So I had like cardboard and duct tape like all over my windows to like try to get it dark enough. And you wake up and you're like, oh, it's time to go to work. No, it's 2 a.m. Got to go back to bed.
Yeah,
So
people.
that was really difficult. My sleep wake cycle was really messed up there. And then in the winter, it's the exact opposite, 23 to 24 hours of darkness in the winter. And it rains so often out there that you rarely ever see the sun.
Oh my God. What's the worst? I'm saying like is it rain? Is it wind, snow? Like I'm saying what is it most of the time? Rain? Is that the worst
I,
one?
I would yeah, I would say rain and wind.
Rain?
The wind out there is incredibly fast and it
Wind.
wraps
Yeah.
around the building. Like sometimes I thought, is that thunder? No, it's just like the wind wrapping around the building so fast.
Mm.
I mean, there's
Okay.
times they'll never cancel school because of too much snow, but they will cancel it for too much wind because it can just take little kids straight off their feet.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah,
Mhm.
I gotta go visit. I mean, it sounds incredible still.
It's
It's
incredible. If you go out there to Iceland, man, I'll come with you because I'm
Oh,
dying to
I'd
go
love
out
to.
there
Oh,
again.
I'd love to. And you have an open invitation to Russia. I know it's not the best time right now, but honestly, it's
I'm ready. I'm ready.
it's any time as an American, I'm telling you, you're fine, you know? As long as you don't try to
Llegato.
smuggle weed into the country, you'll be all right, I promise. So
Yeah.
I promise you, as an American, you'll be fine. You'll have a great time. You'll love it.
Yeah.
So is Iceland where you sort of would say where you kind of cut your teeth? Like, is that where you kind of got
Yeah,
really
I think
good?
so. I think
Mm-hmm.
so because that's where I learned. I kind of got to work with a couple of the people that were training the, I guess, kind of world champion contenders and people who are like trying to prepare for the Olympics. And the gym that I went to was incredible. There's actually two skills named after Icelandic gymnasts from that specific gym that I went to. So I was incredibly blessed to be at that specific one. So that's where I cut my
Wow.
teeth. That's where I did a lot of the training on the skills that I have now. It's also where I developed a lot of my health problems, man. So I
Hmm.
did not realize how much the sun affects your general health and well-being and mood until I moved there.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. And I bet that's one of those genetic things too, to some degree, right? Because I bet
Yes.
probably, as we know, with like, for example, the Eskimo diet, right, of it being mostly, fat and protein and all that, they're more resistant to ketogenic stuff. And
Yes. Yeah.
I would imagine like a rooted Icelandic person probably has a more of a resistance to a lack of sunlight. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, and I think so. And that's probably the case for a lot of the Nordic countries. I'd imagine they're probably better at making and storing vitamin D because,
mm-hmm,
they only get a small window in the summer to get that vitamin D. And so they
mm-hmm.
have to store it for such a long time.
Yeah. And
One
and
thing,
D is just like we're a little bit obsessed as a culture with vitamin D from the sun because
mm,
the sun does so many other things besides vitamin D because that
yes,
even that
yeah.
little process does so many other things. So to even think about it, that it's just probably so many other things that they're better at or have a higher tolerance to. So you started what kind of health problems were you experiencing?
So I guess the first thing I noticed is I had a ton of warts. So I actually have a picture in the Repeat forum where I have 30 warts per hand.
Wow.
30 per hand. Yeah. And
Wow.
some of them were the size of a dime. And it was just incredibly bad. And I could not figure out the root cause of this, right? And at the time, I didn't know anything about nutrition. I had no idea about vitamin D. I had no idea about the importance of the sun. But what I noticed is once a year for the summer, I would always come back to South Carolina. When I was in South Carolina, the warts would actually stop growing. And I was like, oh, that is so strange.
Hmm.
And so they would actually shrink a little bit. I would go back to Iceland, and then within a month or two, it would start right back up. So they would continuously grow. And so I was like, man, that is so strange. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe it's something I'm doing. I should get into nutrition. I should get into eating healthy. And I'm an athlete, right? It's like I want the advantage over anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So that started my horrendous dive into low carb. And I mean, I guess it started with like kind of like veganism. I was like, oh man,
Oh,
I need
okay.
to,
So
I
you
need
went
to,
down
I need, oh dude,
the
I went
trotted
down
path.
everything, bro. I went
Oh,
down
okay.
everything, man. I
All
was doing
right.
the blood diet and like low carb diet and everything you can possibly think of.
Mm,
And I was like, veganism in the way. And then I was like, low carb is the way. And then I'm like, no carb is the way. I'm
mm.
like, Ken Berry is going to save my soul.
Oh wow, Ken
Like,
Berry. He was already on the
yeah.
scene, huh? I mean, because he wasn't on the scene for a
Yeah.
while.
Well, and I think this is when it was all really taking off I guess this would have been 2019 when I first started getting into health.
Mm-hmm.
And it really took a turn for the worse during COVID, man. Because like during COVID, that's when there was because we were trapped inside our homes, everyone's like, no sugar, like, demonizing like all of these things like that. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Sugar's the devil, So I eliminated all sugar from my diet, no
And this is why
fruit,
you're in Iceland,
no
right? At that
condiments.
time.
This is when I'm in Iceland.
Mm.
So I'm already getting stress from the weather, from the lack of sunlight. I mean, if you read a lot of like Ray Peat's articles, darkness is a stressor, which is probably one of the reasons why we produce melatonin, so we can go to sleep, so we can avoid that stressor and then wake back up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but I had no idea who Ray Peat or any of these people were at the first time. So my health progressively just got worse and worse. And the worse it got, the more I figured, oh, I'm just not doing this hard enough. I just need to do it harder, right? So got rid of all the sugar, got rid of all of that. And I was like, yes, I've finally gotten rid of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And my health never improved. In fact, it just got worse. I remember there was a time where I was just eating eggs and steak, and that was it. That was the only thing I ate, right? And of course, I got butter, and I was starting to read about all of the fat soluble vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. And I was taking all of those. And I was staying on top of it. And around that time, I also found Morley Robbins, he's really obsessed with minerals and stuff like that. So I was making sure that I was taking care of it. Yet my health didn't improve. In fact, I started eating eggs, and even the eggs gave me intense pain. Like my stomach literally felt like I had thorns inside of it that were just like moving around. I would just be on the ground, just laying flat in pain.
Wow.
I just couldn't even move.
Mm-hmm.
And so like at that point, I was like, well, I'm on the best diet in the world. Like, why is this happening? Like I felt so betrayed at that point. So it was only at like my lowest point in life that I finally was like, oh, maybe this isn't the answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I couldn't even sleep. Like I think I got like, there was just weeks in a row where I got like maybe 1 hour of sleep per night. I would do everything possible that I could, and just was not able to sleep at all.
Mm. My God, man. And like, Iceland, they're not shy about eating animal food and all that kind of stuff, right? They have a pretty good. What kind of diet
Yeah.
would you say the average Icelander follows?
Um, well, they're getting a big influence from Canadian food and American food, because since they're close to that, a lot of that crap is getting imported.
Mm.
They definitely eat better than Americans, but you can tell, like now that there's pizza and ice cream full of carrageenan, because I thought carrageenan was banned in EU countries and stuff like that, but they're still getting a lot of like really crappy ingredients from Americans.
Mm.
And so you can see the Icelandic people overall, they're fitter than Americans, but they're starting to get a little bit fat.
So it's spreading everywhere, even Iceland. Because I
Mhm.
mean, I know they have like, national dishes like a goat's head, right? Something like that. Am I right?
Yeah, they have the sheep's head, and then they also
Oh,
have
sheep's head. My bad.
yeah,
Yeah,
sheep's
yeah,
head,
yeah.
and I think they have it's called haukat, which is like shark.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
that's right.
I
I remember,
so
forgot
I don't
about
know
that.
exactly how this food came to be discovered, but there's no trees on the island, or not trees that bear fruit, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't really plant anything because the planting season is so short, and you basically have to have a greenhouse to keep it warm enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they were just living off of fish at one point, and for some reason they would take the shark, and I'm sorry if I get this wrong, Icelandic people, and they would dig up a hole, they would put it inside, and then they would put ammonia on top of it. I'm not exactly sure how they got that ammonia. I mean, ammonia is like naturally inside like sharks and stuff.
Hmm.
Maybe they got it from urine, maybe they peed on it. I have no idea. And then they
Hmm.
ferment it. They ferment it inside the ground, and then they dig it up and then eat it. And so
Mm.
this is not a common thing that people in Iceland eat right now. It's like something that you eat once a year to kind of like remember that tradition, right?
Classic delicacy.
So
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I think a lot of Icelandic people would agree it doesn't taste very good.
Yeah. I know they cook bread like that. Same thing.
Yep.
Put it in the fire,
Yep.
right? Oh
Hmm.
man, what a unique
And you
thing.
probably watched that episode with Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, maybe I have. Maybe that's where I've seen that, huh?
Yeah. And
So
they're
he does a tour there where they cook the bread in the ground.
yeah, yeah.
Ah.
But you know, they're Iceland is super modernized, you know, like you can go into shopping malls and see the exact same brands and stuff that we have here. You know, they're very technologically driven over there.
Of course, yeah. Man. So so what got you out of that hole a little bit? What did you start trying?
Man, I think it was just a combination of hitting rock bottom and YouTube, man. I was just constantly on YouTube, just searching for problems and or searching for ways to get rid of problems and stuff like that. And one of my friends, he told me, he's like, man, there's like something wrong with my thyroid. You know, he was on low carb with me as well, right? And
Hmm.
he kept talking about thyroid all the time. And I was like, man, I've never really given any attention to like thyroid. And I was like, I guess I'll search it, right? And like lo and behold, like the second video I found was Danny's video. And it was like the first episode with him and Georgie Dinkov, right?
Oh wow.
And so I just started watching this thing, and every single symptom that I was having, like these guys were talking about, I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is the first time that someone has been talking about my problems like I'm not crazy, you know?
Hmm.
Because, you know, it's like on mainstream health, everything is backwards, right? It's like you'll go on the internet and you'll be like, how to lower cortisol. And then Google will be like, do you mean how to raise cortisol? And I'm like, no, how to lower cortisol. And no
Yeah.
one, and people will be like, take a lavender bath, relax, you know? And I'm like, well, I've tried all of those things and it's not working. And then when I realized the connection between sugar and cortisol, the first time I ever had an orange juice after I was low carb, all
Hmm.
of a sudden it was like, I
Mm.
just relaxed for the first time, for the first time in like years, you know, I felt like everything was like, okay,
Wow.
you
So
know,
that's
and
so good
I
old
think that's
orange
what it
juice
was.
dipped you into the Ray Pete world, huh? That's cool,
Yeah,
man.
absolutely. Absolutely. You know,
That's cool.
so and I feel like a lot of people like me can only learn through hard lessons. You know, I'm one of those super stubborn people, man. You know, I've worked on it. I've gotten a lot better through repeat. Now I'm actually pretty open and I want to have my beliefs challenged and stuff like that. But at the time, I was so, and I think a lot of people who are in a low metabolic state, they can only think in black and white, and that is it. So when they come to the repeat world, they're like, is dairy good or bad? Which one?
Hmm.
Which one?
Hmm.
You know, and you're
Hmm.
like, it's neither. You know, it depends a lot on where your gut's at right now. It depends on your background. You know, you're like, just give me
Yeah.
the answer. Just tell me, is it good or is it bad? You
Yeah,
know.
it's just a never-ending thing, man. People want extremes. But also
Mhm.
people have to sometimes unfortunately go through that hard road of yeah, and then just being like, all right, maybe I don't know everything. So that
Yeah, I mean,
happens.
I was absolutely. I mean, I was ideologically possessed, and I can see it in a lot of these creators, man. When they start
Hmm.
going so low carb, and you start seeing the bags under their eyes, and they start talking a little bit slower, and they start getting angrier,
Hmm.
it's like
Hmm.
I was in that state. I recognize that state.
Hmm. Well, it happens on both sides too, man. There's also vegans that eat tons of carbs and they're also like frail and falling apart and whatever.
Absolutely, absolutely.
At the
Well,
end of the
and I think
day,
there's no, yeah, exactly. There's people love those extreme answers, you
hmm
know, and the truth is like always in the middle. Balance is always critical, but no one wants to hear that.
no, yeah. So you started applying some of these principles, you started feeling better, and then you moved to, did you move straight to Vegas to become a performer of Cirque,
I
or did you?
moved back to South Carolina for a year, and man, after I had had such amazing experiences in Iceland, I was like, you know what? I can't go back to my old lifestyle, right? I need something different. I need something better, right?
Hmm.
So I was working out at Camp Woodward. I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go for Cirque Du Soleil, right? I'm going to put everything on the line. So I started training, for like a whole year ahead. I'm like, I'm just going to refine my skills as much as I can.
Hmm.
When the camp was done at the end of summer, I had about $1,000 in my bank account. I gassed up my car. I put everything in my car that I own. I drove across the desert. So it was about
Oh, wow.
33 hours of driving from South Carolina to Nevada. I didn't know anyone there. I didn't have any contacts here. I spent my first couple of weeks in a hostel, and
Wow.
slowly, one thing after another started to open up. And I was like, this. I was 29 at the time, and I was like, you know what? I want to be in Cirque du Soleil by the time I am 30, right? And I started filming a couple of videos. I sent it in, and I changed my location to Las Vegas, which is important, right? They don't want to pay to have you relocated from wherever, unless you are
Hmm.
the top 1% of the 1%, the best athletes in the world. Because that's a big risk. Is
Hmm.
number one, they're taking a huge risk to fly you out there to have you try out or whatever. Or if
Hmm.
they sign a contract, now they've got a contract for 2 years with someone who may or may not be as good as they say or in their videos, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So this was right before Valentine's Day in about 3 years ago. And I sent in my video, and 2 days later, they're like, hey, can you come to the Mystère stage and try out for us? I was like, absolutely, I'll be there, man.
Wow,
And
dude.
so I was definitely the most nervous I've ever been in my life, but went on the stage, and usually they have multiple people trying out at the same time. It was
Okay.
just me. It was just
Oh,
me,
I was
and
gonna ask you. So,
yeah,
okay.
it
Wow.
was just me because they needed someone. They're like, we need someone right now that can fill this in. So I was right place, right time, everything aligned. But I was under so much stress because like the president or the artistic directors there and the coaches are there, and they're all looking like this, and they're like, all right, go show us what you got.
Wow, dude. And how long was that try? I mean, did you just do like a couple runs, or I mean, how did that go
Yeah,
down?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I probably did like 10, 15 tumbling passes. And at that level, they're not so much looking for crazy skills. They're looking for, is this person consistent? Can they find their
Consistency.
feet every
Hmm.
single time? And
Hmm.
can they take corrections? So they might give you a correction, be like, hey, try this. And then if you're like, yeah, I know, thanks. Like
Okay,
then
yeah, yeah.
they immediately they'll cross you out and be like, I do not want to work with this person. The
Right,
most
because
important
you're
thing
part of a
is,
team, right? It's not your performance, it's the team,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
There's in our show there are 64 other athletes that are on that stage. And so it's like
Hmm.
you've got to work like a team. So they don't want to hire a diva. It doesn't matter how talented you are. If they can't count on you, then they don't want to work with you. And if you're not easy to work with. So that's
Mm.
what I did. I did 10, 15 tumbling passes. They were like, okay, I think this guy will work. And then they hired me there on the spot.
On the spot.
On the
Wow,
spot.
man. That's a great story, Elliot. It's a fucking great story,
Yes.
man.
Yes.
Oh wow. I didn't know. I thought you gotta go. So what is it that I've heard about going to the Cirque sort of school, right? Where they teach you.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that
So
for
this
the
is
performers and the characters sort of the show? Is that what that's
so
for?
I'm not entirely 100% sure because there's an acronym for it. It's called PPP. It's like performance precision practice or something like that. I can't remember what it is. And I think this is mainly for teeterboard artists and other people who are interested. So the teeterboard is like a teeter totter where people are hopping from like one side to the other and doing cool
Hmm.
flips.
Which
Uh,
Mystère
for
has.
for
Hmm.
yeah, for anyone in the audience who isn't familiar with this, and so they'll train for several months, up to a year up there. And I mean, there's so many different disciplines that you can choose when you go up there, but you're getting hands-on coaching from some of the best professionals in the world that are working for Cirque du Soleil. And you're also doing side classes. So you're doing acting, you're doing theater work, you are working on makeup,
Hmm.
you are doing physical fitness classes,
Hmm.
nutrition. So unfortunately, I have did not get to do that, but it totally depends on what position you're looking for, what level that you're already at. If you're a pretty good fit for the show, then they can just bring you in without you having to do that
It's
program.
because you also have a very specific sort of skill and position, right? Like you're the
Yes,
tumbler, like
yeah,
you're not. So some of those like Mr. has like, a couple of characters, has a clown. So those guys are probably going to go through the training of what they want you to do every show and all that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when you're in that program in Montreal, they're training you for the specific show they think you would fit best, right? So they're going to train you for all of the cues that you're going to need in Mystère. So you already know it before you get there. And then they go through a process called integration. So when you do come to Mystère, they see what skills you have, what cues you've already learned, and then they try to one by one see how it's going to fit into the show. And so we do stage runs. They'll take the entire theater, they'll set it up just like we're doing the show. They'll lower the lights, you'll go in a costume, you'll put all of your makeup on, and then you'll run through. And they'll see, can this guy react to stress? Does everything look exactly the way it should look in the show? And if it doesn't, then they do it a couple more times until it is ready.
Mm-hmm. And dude, you were so wonderful. You went above and beyond. You took me and my friends backstage, and I thought, you'll just maybe get us on stage. We'll take a few pics, but you led us through the whole thing, through the whole backstage area.
Yes.
We saw some of the performers training post show. We
Yes.
saw where you do PT and massage work, and thank you so much for that. But that was really awesome and wonderful, and also, I mean, I sort of knew that a lot goes into it, but I almost was like even more impressed because I thought, man, this even more so than I thought goes into this. Like, it's crazy how many moving parts there are, and it's crazy how you have little adjustments here and there. You were showing me there's the yellow light, there's this light, and if that, if this happens, then that happens, and that happens at this. I just thought, wow, it's really incredible, and you do that every single show. How many things have to fall into place? And obviously you guys are professionals, and you get better at it, and every show most of the time probably runs smoothly, but it's still incredible to me, just to see how much goes into an hour. How long is the show? Hour and a half? Is it about that?
Yes, that's correct. Hour and a half.
Really incredible, man. A lot of stuff. Mystère has a live band, and I think was it the bassist that has the record for the longest.
The Guinness record for the most amount of shows performed, which is 10,001.
10,001 shows. That's crazy. That's crazy. And he's been there since 1990 something, right?
Yeah, 1993. Like basically since the show opened.
Wow, incredible, man. So like I'm curious, what is your on a performance day? Do you do any training before? Do you warm up? Do you do training like some of the athletes were doing after the show? How do you do your thing?
Yeah, I guess it totally depends on what day of the show it is. On Fridays, we have rehearsals. And so we're going through different cues. We're doing some training on stage. And so those days I try to take it easy because we're there at 2:30 p.m. and then we don't go home until 11 p.m. at night. So those days I don't really do any training. On Saturdays
every
and Sundays.
Friday, so you're running through the whole show? Through the whole show?
No. Well, a whole show just requires too much. It requires the stage hands to be there performing and moving things in and out. So it's just from a financial standpoint, it would be impossible to do a dress rehearsal every single week. So we only work on the specific parts that we need for the show that week.
So you're just going through your particular skills.
Yeah, going through your
particular
trapeze
guy,
skills.
You're going through the trapeze. If you're on the teeter-totter, you're doing the teeter-totter. Okay.
Exactly. That's correct.
Very cool.
So, and then on Saturdays and Sundays, then I'll do a little bit of weightlifting before and actually during the show as well. Everyone has their own specific warm-up that is conducive to their body. So usually before a show, because I always want to be in the best possible state as well, the best possible mental state. So I try to watch what I eat before the show. Usually I'll take half an aspirin and a little bit of taurine. And then that for me, I feel a lot of mental clarity.
Oh, legend. Nice.
Yeah. So I'll do that. I'll do that before the first show and then before the second show.
Wow. And you said weightlifting during? What do you mean weightlifting during?
Yeah, sometimes so we have, depending on what part you have in the show, you might have a lot of downtime in between cues. And sometimes that downtime is 30 seconds, and then sometimes that downtime could be 20 minutes. So you've got a good amount of free time that you could get in a couple of sets of like bicep curls, calf raises,
So you're trying to keep yourself fresh or rather going before your engine kind of cools off too much. Is that what
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit of both. So I'm also big on efficiency. I try to keep my workouts as short as possible, as intense as possible. And I try to get it done so that the rest of my day is totally free.
You're living that Mike Mentzer lifestyle, baby.
Absolutely, bro.
Legend,
Bro,
legend.
I love Excel spreadsheets, man. That's what I do for fun. I just see if I can get the new high score on Excel.
So, like, I remember one of my favorite parts of the show, and I think you said it's a lot of people's favorite part of the show was, is it the Kolev sisters? Kolev? Is
Yes,
that
that's
right?
correct. The
Kolev.
Koleb sisters.
Yeah. So, like, are they just doing that one act and they're getting off stage, or are they?
They have a couple other cues inside the show that they do, but
Mm-hmm.
all in all, that's basically the only one that they do.
Okay, but so most people will do something else as far as like be in the background or do something on stage. You're not just. Is it very rarely that somebody just goes on, does their act, and gets off, and then they're done for that show? Or
Yeah, that's pretty rare because you generally have a main act and then you have what we call them cues.
hmm
So my main act is what's called planche. That's when I'm doing the tumbling. But in Chinese poles, when the guys are like sliding down the poles
hmm
and just doing all kinds of crazy acrobatics, you can see me in the background climbing up and down, doing choreography, moving my hands. Then I'll
hmm
run off stage, run back on stage. It's nothing too difficult. So we have choreography mixed in between our main act and everything else.
But you're getting involved otherwise besides your main part.
Yeah,
Are the
absolutely. For
Chinese
example, it's like
poles? Sorry, are the Chinese poles? Are those the same Chinese poles in Ocean's 11 or 12
yes,
when they're? Are they?
yes,
Is that the same
that's
show? Is that
correct.
Mystère?
No,
Oh,
that's not Mystère. That's a different show. I don't know. I don't think that show exists anymore.
oh, okay.
But
But it
the
looks so
but in
similar.
terms, yes, the apparatus is the same.
Oh my God, dude! I just realized that. I was thinking. Now I remember that because I think that's Ocean's 11. Which
It
one did
is.
they?
It is. Yeah, that's
Oh
when that's the
man,
one where they're trying to knock over the Bellagio.
yeah. Oh wow, dude, that's kind of like wow, it's cool. I don't know. It just feels like because like I said, I haven't seen Mystère before. It's my first time seeing it, and
Mhm.
it was just yeah. Now I feel like I'm part of history, man. Because that
Absolutely,
show's been
dude.
there for a while, right? Long time,
Yeah, it
long
has.
time.
It is the original Cirque du Soleil residential show. So that
Mm,
that theater was built for the show, and they didn't even know if it was going to work. Cirque du Soleil started as this company it's like a French Canadian company, and they moved into Las Vegas in the early 90s. And they just had this tiny little tent, like next to like Caesar's Palace, where they were just doing a couple of, just trying to introduce the world to like circus, right?
mm-hmm.
Because circus acts had been done before, but not to music, not with all of these crazy moving stages, and it's an amalgamation of art and circus, and that had never been seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So they got the money, they built this. Treasure Island's like, hey, we want this show. They built the theater, and they had no idea if it was going to work. And lo and behold, 31 years later, it is probably the best-selling Cirque du Soleil show.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the best ones I've ever seen. Um, so I'm curious. So you were saying you take a little aspirin, a little taurine. What do you try to eat? What's your, are you are you ice cream, orange juice, and what else is there? Repeat.
I'll
Coke.
do that. Yeah, I'll do that at the end of the night. Once I'm done with the show or whatever. I try not to have too many fats before the show. I can definitely tell if I drink a glass of milk and then I go on stage, I'm like, whoa, man.
Mm, okay.
Yeah. So if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to try to get my fats early in the morning and then late at night, right before I go to sleep. And then when I'm at the show, I try to concentrate mostly on protein and then a little bit of carbs as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And my friends were with me and they were asking sort of you like, "Oh, what do you guys eat?" Because I think a lot of people that aren't aware that, they think that everybody eats the same, everybody trains the same, and
Yeah.
some people are just not aware that at your guys' level, it's
It's
actually
totally unique.
everybody's unique, yeah. And just to go along with the same thing what we were talking about earlier with diet, you see, just like everybody's diet is different, everybody trains differently, and it's so you guys are not everybody does their own thing, obviously, but you have some guidance if you're looking for it, sort of nutritionists and PTs and stuff like that working with you
Yes,
guys.
exactly. Yep.
But
Yeah.
there's no strict, you got to do this, you got to do that, blah blah blah.
No, no, no. There's no strict requirements.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting, man. Any other supplements that you like that you're taking pre post
I
show that you?
mean, I'm still in that experimental stage. I do take tyronine or some of Georgie's thyroid still.
Mm,
And that seems to give me, especially not so much in the summer. In the summer, I don't really need it, right? But especially in the winter, now when we're
hmm
starting to get less sunlight, then I definitely use that because I notice a big difference in my mood. Definitely taking vitamin D. Every now and then I'll get K2. Of course, liver, oysters, eggs. Every now and then I'll try some more of the exotic stuff like methylene blue,
hmm.
progesterone, pregnenolone, allopregnenolone. Some of the interesting stuff that Georgie has, but only like just to see what it does.
Here and there, how you feel.
Hmm.
Interesting. And so, what about? I wanted to talk to you about injuries. Like, how do people? You've told me some wild injuries that just people have had in the show a couple of times. Has there been
Yes.
any injury during the show?
There has, but it's usually not a big injury. So we try to perform at like whatever is maybe 75% the level of the difficulty that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be out there every night doing your hardest skill because that's going to end in disaster, right? You want to do a skill that you can do 99 or 100% of the time, a skill that you can do in your sleep. So it's very rare that we do have injuries, but they still do happen. And typically it is tumblers and teeterboard artists that get the most injured. In teeterboard, you're relying on another person to push you, right? And if they don't give you enough push and you commit to a really difficult trick, you know,
Mm-hmm.
something bad could happen. And then also, you're working under lights and in costumes. So every now and then light just catches your eyes while you're tumbling and you get momentarily dazed and you hope you land on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's not often, but it happens.
mm-hmm. During that particular show that I attended, I noticed, and I talked to you about it afterwards. I don't know if you remember that. I could tell that they gave themselves a little bit of extra time on the teeter board because they kind of went up, down, up. I heard them yell something, whatever their cue is, because they have their
Yes.
own sort of things, right? And then I watched, oh, okay, they're doing a couple extra. And then you're noticing that the musicians are keeping the groove going for a little
Yeah,
bit.
and
They're
they're
waiting, they're
building it
waiting,
up, building
they're
up the
building.
tension.
Because I was like, oh, he should have went by now, but he yelled something. One more go, one more go, one more go, and then he went. So maybe it was another, I don't know, two or three pushes. So I mean, you guys are really like you can't be. It maybe some things, maybe the choreography, it's just like boom, boom, boom. But other your skills, you got to be awake, right? You can't be falling asleep. You can't be just in your own little world thinking about whatever you're thinking about, huh?
No, absolutely. And the specific time that you're referencing is the very end of the tumbling sequence, what we call planche. And it's like kind of like the big trick, right? And so we have the teeter board. There's people hopping on both sides. And then someone steps onto the teeter board and then they launch them, usually onto two or three people standing like in a column. And
Mm-hmm.
then they backflip up and then they catch them by the ankles. And so this is unbelievable to see in person. But
It is.
because you are relying on other people to make sure that they give you the correct amount of push, and then you're relying on people to catch you, and then you're relying on yourself to make sure you have the correct amount of rotation to get to them. There are so many moving parts that everyone has to be on their A game all of the time.
It's really incredible. It really is. I love it. I love it so much. I could never get enough. I could watch a Cirque every night and have a good time. It's and everybody does again after the show's over. Everybody does their own thing. Some people stay. I noticed there was some. I think one of the Kolev sisters, or maybe both, they were there working
Mm-hmm.
out right after the show,
Yep.
and that was the last show of the night. So they get their workouts in there, and then other people just go if they want to go. Another gentleman you introduced me to, I think was a Russian guy, right? Was he Russian?
Yes, that's correct.
He was out of there like the second
Yeah,
that we
he's yeah,
came
yeah.
to
The
the
second that
second
show
we
done,
came
he's
to
out.
the door. He was out. He was like, I'm going home. How do you do it? Do you stay around or it depends on the night?
Yeah, it totally depends on the night. If I've got a little bit of extra energy, I'll put in like a small workout or do a couple of skills like that, and then I'll head off the stage. But I try to keep my training to an absolute minimum, only the skills and exercises that I need, because I'm definitely one of those people where I'm completely bound by how much recovery I have. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not recovering, then I'm not going to be able to perform my skills. So that to me is just priority number one.
Mm-hmm. Do you have complete rest days that you don't do anything?
Yes. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. Typically on like a Tuesday or a Thursday is when I do those rest days, and I'll try to stay at home as much as I can for the entire day.
You're not doing anything. You're not even getting upside down, spinning on your board, not doing anything.
No, no, no. Yeah,
Mm.
because at this stage, athletes should be so aware of their body. It's like that you should notice the subtle cues where it's like, hey, it's time to walk away. It's time to recover. Let's not push this any further. Let's pick it up later. And
Mm.
for me, I'm at that point where I can tell exactly where I'm at that level where it's like, all right, let's stop. Let's go rest.
Mm. You're a smart man. I mean, honestly, man, because a lot of people don't know, and just it's sad to watch sometimes people push it because they get they get excited about what they're doing, and then they push it,
Yes.
and you're a smart guy for doing that, And then you watch people like Mike Tyson fight was last night. Did you see it?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. We were watching that because I think the fight was from 9 to 9:30, and our show started right at 9:30. So like
Uh-huh.
30 seconds before we're
They
going
were
on the
done.
stage, we're like, Mike, knock him out, knock him out. Is the
No.
final round, and then oh,
Listen,
dude.
I get all the Jake Paul hate. I want him to
Uh
get
huh.
knocked out as much as the other guy, but
Yeah.
it's Mike Tyson, and also I. By the way, I won $100 because I bet a friend of mine because I was saying that
Mm.
I knew from day one it's going to be an exhibition fight and it's going to go to decision and Jake Paul's going to win, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. Because
Yeah.
I look at it this way: on one side you have this young kid who's 27. I thought he was almost 30. Well, I mean, I guess he is
Yeah. Yeah. I
technically,
thought it was
but
older. Yeah.
27, And I was thinking, if he knocks out Mike Tyson, it's gonna be so sad. It's gonna be so sad because he's like a. Even though it's weird how we decide. It is funny though, like how we decide who's a hero in our culture. I don't know
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
again, I'm a big Mike Tyson fan because I used to be into boxing. I used to box a little bit, so like I love the guy. He's I
Yeah.
mean he's incredible to watch, but he doesn't have like the cleanest like record in life. You know what I mean? Like he went to
No.
prison.
No.
I'm just
Yep.
saying, but for whatever reason, he's fucking loved. Everybody loves Mike Tyson, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, if this guy knocks him out, it's gonna be so sad. So I thought, he's not gonna want to do that. And now, on the other hand, if Mike Tyson, 58-year-old guy, knocks out this young kid, everybody will be happy. But then on the other side of that, still, people are gonna be like, oh well, it's Mike Tyson, heavyweight. Why would you have him knock out this young kid and give him
Mhm.
brain damage? So I just thought, no way they're gonna even try. And also, it was like 14-ounce gloves, 2-minute rounds, eight
Mhm. Yep.
rounds. It was just everything was set up for no one to get knocked out. That was the whole
Yep.
thing of it, honestly. So
Yep.
I won $100 anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's just the biological reality. The entire time I waited with bated breath. Like you could tell everyone in our room was just like holding on, like not breathing, because we were all waiting for that one specific moment where it's like Rocky Four, like just comes out of the corner and just knocks even Drago
No.
to his
Again,
face. But
I wanted as much
the
as
the
the other
moment just
guy.
never happened. Yeah.
No, no. So, anyways, yeah, and you're what I brought Mike up because I was saying, and then sometimes you watch people like that just push it way too hard, way too long, and you're like, dude, you shouldn't have been there. I mean, dude, he was in a wheelchair like 2 months ago because he had some sort of, I forgot, was it a some stomach problem? I can't remember. Remember,
Yeah.
he got pulled off a plane. I mean, like, he's an old man. I mean, listen, Father Time is undefeated. We're all gonna get defeated by it at some point. So it's just the reality, and it's like, kudos to you for understanding your body and giving yourself rest days. And I'm just saying it's incredible because a lot of athletes and people in general just sometimes push it so hard for too long.
Yeah. Well, and you got to be careful when you wrap your identity up in what you do. There's so many people that they spend their entire life chasing after an Olympic medal. They win that medal and then they wake up the next day and you have the rest of your life to still do. And you have no idea because what to do with it because you've already gotten your Olympic medal. What's next? What's after that? And if you hang your entire life and personality on that specific goal, I think you're going to be disappointed in the end.
Mm. It's great, man. It's great what you're saying. It's great, great advice. Yeah, and I was going to ask you any other advice for people that are, maybe young kids or teenagers or whatever that want to pursue Cirque or do something similar. what would you give them? What would you tell them to do?
I would say the first thing you do is, try to find a coach, try to find someone, and it's difficult to find a good quality coach, because when you're new to this game, it's like you really have no idea. Coach has said, I can help you with this, I can help you with this, I'm the best at that, I'm the best at that.
Hmm.
You kind of have to just go around and try to vet who is the best coach, because they can shorten the process for you so quickly. It's like I would have been in Cirque du Soleil 5 years ago had I just had a coach who'd say, focus on these basics, get those toes pointed, let's do this, let's do that, don't waste your time over here. So I would say, exactly like how you train your clients, you shorten the process, you figure out the drills, and then you're also the person that keeps them accountable, right?
Hmm.
So on the days where they don't want to go to the gym, you're like, you send them that message, hey, I'm going to meet you at the gym in 15 minutes. And they're like, all right, guess I'm locked in now. So
Hmm.
I'd say that's the first thing, is like get a coach. And then the second thing is, if you really want to do Cirque du Soleil, then your mentality has to be not in what you accomplished this week or this month or this year, but 10 years from now. It's like you have to think like, don't underwrite the importance of continuous small gains every single day. It's like they may seem small, but they build the rungs of the ladder that you're trying to climb up. And if you try to skip too many of those rungs, it actually makes it more difficult to climb to the top of the ladder. So I would say don't 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 skip the basics, and try to refine those as much as possible before you move on to the next step, because eventually it all comes back to you, right? You skip the basics, now you end up with problems that you've got to go back, and it takes years to fix instead of a couple of weeks.
Hmm. Wonderful, man. I love that advice. Find a mentor and focus on the basics and think long term. It's a marathon at the end of the day, huh?
Exactly.
That's wonderful, man. I will link you up in the Instagram world and all that. Thank you for your time, brother. Thanks for coming onto the show. Please go see my friend Elliot at Mystère in Las Vegas if you're there. It's a wonderful show, it really is. And yeah, man. Cheers. We'll do this again sometime, eh?
Thank you so much. All right,
All
it's
right,
good to
man.
see you, Leo.
Things you
You
own
too, man.
end up owning you.